Welcome back to Game Galaxy, and today I wanted to share with you my personal top 10 picks for the original Nintendo Entertainment System. The NES is a truly amazing console, the shining phoenix that rose from the ashes of Atari and single-handedly saved gaming and paved the way for what we have today. There's something magical about NES games. It's just the right amount of bits and the music and sound chips that just make those games extremely fun to play even today, and it gave experiences never before seen in gaming. Now, top 10 lists are a little silly to make, but there's something alluring about them as well, and just please keep in mind that these are just the personal top 10 picks that I love to throw on and play at any given time, so I'm no video game authority of any kind, and there's a lot of great games I'm not going to cover. For instance, Legend of Zelda, not going to see it on this list. We all know The Legend of Zelda is amazing, but I don't always feel like playing The Legend of Zelda. And there's a lot of classics I still need to play, like Metroid. Haven't done it yet. I grew up a Sega guy, so missing out on some of the classics. So try not to get too flustered, and let's have fun. I love arcade games and classic arcade games, and the granddaddy of all arcade games is Pac-Man. That's why at number 10 is a very unique Pac-Man game called Pac-Mania. Now this game is not an NES exclusive, however I've always preferred the NES version, even over my beloved Sega Genesis. This is a sort of isometric Pac-Man game, giving the game boards a bit of that 3D perspective. The gameplay isn't that much different from other Pac-Man games. You're still munching up those pellets and avoiding ghosts and mazes. However, in Pac-Mania you can jump and hop right over the ghosts. This is definitely an awesome feature that I love very much, but as you progress you'll have to be careful because certain ghosts will jump as well as soon as you jump. So if you try to jump as you're squaring off with a green or gray ghost, he'll jump and you'll hit them in midair. You'll notice there's many more ghosts than the usual 4 of the classic Pac-Man, and eventually there can be 9 ghosts in one round, which is just absolutely nuts. This game is a great joy and a blast to play. Number 9 is The Legend of Kage. This game is super repetitive but extremely fun if you want to throw on and have some awesome ninja action. One of my favorite aspects of this game is you have amazing super long ninja jumps and you can jump from tree to tree. I remember playing this for the first time and I was like, yes! Now this is some ninja action! The story isn't particularly deep. A princess gets taken by some bad ninjas and you have to get her back. You have 2 ways to attack, your Kodachi sword and you can throw shurikens. What's great is you can deflect enemy shurikens by swinging your sword and you'll knock them away. Jumping from tree to tree and swooping down on guys never gets old. Occasionally you'll find power-ups and the color of your gi will change and your shurikens will get larger and your speed and jumps will increase. Usually it's a one-hit kill, but if you're powered up you can take a hit and it'll send your power down to the next level. If you happen to collect a scroll, you'll do some awesome ninja meditation where all your enemies will drop dead upon approach. It's definitely super awesome. You work your way up to the enemy fortress and eventually rescue the princess, but she'll get captured again and the color palette changes, implying the changing of seasons. In between there are boss fights with some interesting characters and you'll feel like you'll be having real ninja battles since they're super fast. After 3 friggin' times of rescuing the princess, you beat the game and you get one of those great text on-screen endings that just make you feel like, really? Couldn't you have just made me a picture? I often hate when it's just text. When I was younger, I used to call this game The Legend of Cage, but as I got older, I learned that it's correctly pronounced The Legend of Kage, as the Japanese name is Kage no Densetsu, which means The Legend of Kage. At number 8 is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. This game is one of the best co-op side-scrolling beat-em-ups on the NES and definitely my favorite. It was such a blast to pick your favorite turtle and fight through waves of Foot Clan soldiers and familiar bad guys to rescue April from Shredder. The gameplay was quick and responsive, and I know that it's not that amazing today, but I remember the first level where the building is on fire being amazing and thinking the graphics were so good. There's tons of Pizza Hut logos everywhere, which is pretty fun, and the Turtles game were always on the forefront of being awesome beat-em-ups, and this is definitely the best in my opinion on the NES. Guns blazing at number 7 is Konami's Contra, or Grisor for Europe. This is the most badass, impossible game to play without the Konami code or game cheating, yet it was an action-packed run-and-gun shooter that put you in the shoes of every 80s action hero cliche, and we all loved it. Contra gets pretty weird, but that first level music is so undeniably ingrained in our souls, and the gameplay is super fun, especially when you play this co-op. You can collect power-ups to change your weapon, and Spreadshot has always been my favorite. In between stages, you had sort of these 3D behind-the-shoulder sections where you had to shoot enemies and deactivate force fields as you infiltrated the enemy bases. Even though Konami is down the tubes today, they seriously made some stellar games in their heyday. Number 6 is Balloon Fight, and programmed by Satoru Iwata, and it's one of my favorite games to just throw on and play. It plays similar to Joust, but you're a goofy looking guy that has 2 balloons strapped to your helmet and you flap your arms to move around, and that's always made me laugh, and it looks hilarious. It looks like he's flapping his hand by his butt. You have to pop the enemy's balloons and knock them off. If one of your balloons get pops, you'll have to tap the button faster to get around, and it'll be much harder to move. If you can make it to a bonus level, you'll get 2 balloons again. This game has a special place in my heart because it was a game that I was able to play with my friend when he broke his arm and his arm was in a cast, and he only had 1 finger to be able to use, and this game only requires pushing 1 button, so we played Balloon Fight a lot while his arm was in the cast. There's also a mode called Balloon Trip where you have to dodge electrical charges and collect balloons for points. It's fun and a nice challenge to see how far you can get. My favorite part about when you die is the music. What is that? What is that noise? I love it. Number 5 is Cubicle, an action puzzle game where you travel through the 4 lands of the fantasy kingdom to rescue princesses and defeat the evil Winter King. Cubicle can freeze enemies with an ice breath attack and turn them into a block of ice that can then be kicked to squash other enemies or kicked into water to make a bridge. You can also conjure up an ice pillar to block enemies or stop a block of ice that you've kicked, which is useful for some puzzles. You have to collect the dream bags to pass the level, and difficulty increases as you progress. This is a great game that my friend and I chose to beat instead of going to school one day, and it was definitely the right choice. Number 4, I think, is one of the biggest hidden gems on the NES, and that's Xerxes. Xerxes is so awesome, and I've covered it in a full review, so be sure to check that out if you want to learn more. But Xerxes is a side-scrolling action game where you play as Apollo on a quest to save Princess Maria and restore each of the island's princesses and restore peace. There are a variety of different weapons and powers you'll collect, as well as piloting different crafts throughout the game. The flying sequences really give a diverse variety of gameplay and keeps things fresh. The music in this game is top-notch for the NES, and the depth of the levels in this game has just always amazed me. This game gets pretty brutally difficult near the end, but it's definitely a favorite in my book. For number 3, I'm actually going to cheat and choose a Famicom game, and that's Final Fantasy III, the real Final Fantasy III, Final Fantasy IIIJ, whatever you want to call it. I originally played this game in early 2006 on a fan-translated ROM, and it was amazing. I had so much fun with it, and it was a really impressive game for the Famicom in terms of scope, story, graphics, and music. The music is amazing thanks to Nobu Uematsu's composition. I love this game because it was 4 boys that get thrown into this huge adventure to save the world, and I had 3 close friends at the time that I named my characters after, so it was really great. This was the first Final Fantasy game to have a job system where you could change your character's class as you progress throughout the game. It's a little skewed in that there are only a few classes that are useful by the end of the game, but it's definitely awesome. This game had summons, chocobos, airships, and everything that made it a great Final Fantasy game. I was so happy to finally play and beat an 8-bit Final Fantasy game because it fixed one of my biggest issues that I had with Final Fantasy 1 and 2 on the NES. And it was the ineffective attack problem, where in FF1 and 2, if you got into a random encounter and you just quickly hit A and had everybody attack the same monster, if your first character killed that monster, your other characters would, instead of going and attacking the next monster, they would still be programmed to be searching for this monster that doesn't exist anymore, and it would render their attack ineffective. Because of that issue, I ended up playing Final Fantasy 1 and 2 on the Game Boy Advance release, Final Fantasy Dawn of Souls, because I just couldn't stand that. Sometimes when you get into a random encounter, you just want to rapidly press A and just blast through those common enemies. And Final Fantasy 3 on the Famicom fixed that, and your character would go on to the next monster, so that was just awesome. Final Fantasy 3 was an amazing adventure, but I'm still sad to this day we never got a 2D 16-bit remake like we did with Final Fantasy 1 and 2 on the PlayStation and Game Boy Advance. It would have been nice to have Final Fantasy 1 through 6 on the PS1 in all of their 16-bit glory. I still need to play through the remake, but there are some changes that I noticed that instead of dropping all 4 boys in the cave, you drop in there alone, and instead of 4 boys, it's 3 boys and a girl. So I'm very curious to see what kind of the changes are when I get around to playing it, but from what I've seen from the intro that I did play, the recreation of the scenes is just really, really great. During the intro credits of this fan translation ROM, it said don't use this ROM with Nesticle. I totally played it with Nesticle. For those of you who can't handle that I picked a Famicom game for number 3 and you need me to pick an NES game for slot 3, fine. I'll pick Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! Because that's always a fun game to throw on and play as Little Mac as you punch those very colorful characters that you have to box. At number 2, we're getting into top 10's cliche territory, but what does it matter if the game is that good? This is a Nintendo system, so of course it's gotta be Super Mario Bros. 3. Man, this game is 8-bit Mario at its finest. It nailed the fun factor of Mario and gave you a little more depth than the previous Mario games, and we get the Tanuki suit. Seriously, right now, I want you to remember the first time you made Mario fly with the Tanuki suit and how that made you feel. Having an inventory of items to store and use later, warp whistles, giant land, flipping while invincible, sliding on your butt, overworld maps, it doesn't get much better than this, folks. Mario 3 is the best Mario game on the NES. Alright, it's time for number 1, and this might be cliche as well, but come on man, this game has magic, and I can sit down and play this anywhere, anytime with mastery. And come on man, look at me. It's gotta be Mega Man 2. The NES Mega Man games all rock, but Mega Man 2 just has that magic that really pulls you in and has such memorable stages and music. Mega Man 2 is what got a lot of us into Mega Man, and it was my first introduction to the series and remains my favorite. The concept of defeating a boss and gaining their power and weapons was so awesome. Being able to think logically about what weapon would be effective against an enemy is the best aspect to this game. Fighting Heat Man? Well, obviously using the water bubble attack on him will shut him down instantly. Hands down, the best weapon in the game is the metal saw blade because Mega Man can shoot this diagonally, which is super useful and it cuts through most enemies with ease. I often use this as my go-to weapon other than the Mega Buster. Getting upgraded with Mega Man's item gadgets are the best, and item number 2 is the best. I love riding on that jet-propelled platform, especially using it to bypass the jumping puzzle in Heat Man stage. Has anyone actually done that jumping puzzle on those appearing blocks? By the end of the game you feel so powerful, and by the time you reach Dr. Wily you beat him into submission with bubbles. Thank you so much for watching my personal top 10 picks for the original Nintendo Entertainment System. Please let me know in the comments below what are your top 10 lists. I always love hearing everybody's different favorite games. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any videos in the future. And please take a moment today and go play an NES game.